data center running smoothly, including administrative overhead. So as you consider moving to the cloud, you also need to consider retraining your personnel to get accustomed to working with cloud services and move away from direct hands-on management of physical servers, network equipment, etc. This is a major shift in business costs and needs to be carefully planned. The one thing you want to be the most careful of is keeping both. If you still have high capital expenditures and growing operating expenditures, the natural reaction may be, well, we need to stop using what we're trying because it's not saving us any money at all. You have to balance the two, as in this first image. Bring down the capital expense while you're moving to an operating expense funding model. So when we talk about the computing models, in other words, the services that we need to implement, we have to consider different types of computing models. These are easily divided, the dichotomy there of public and private. However, most organizations will not be able to go completely over to a public cloud, and they may not want to stay completely within an on-premise private cloud as well. So hybrid is probably one of the most common. And then gradually maybe even freeing up local on-premise resources and moving to a public cloud. Now the term public and private can also be misleading. This is really talking about where is it being hosted. In a public environment where your data may be misunderstood as being publicly available, or is it going to be in a private cloud where we know that we're controlling it privately in our own data center? This is more about where the resources are, not so much the exposure of the data. So that's usually a term that has to be carefully used. If I tried not to use it at all, but in the public cloud, which means you have vendors on the internet that are providing public services to you, where you still can control the access to your resources and your data and keep them private. And when you do choose a public cloud vendor, like Microsoft with Azure, you also can choose different services that are shared with other customers or completely dedicated to you within your subscription or your tenant. Shared public cloud services are less expensive, but you are sharing it with other customers. Now, there is no bleed over, if you could say, between customers. They're still being kept totally isolated from each other, but you may still be using common physical assets and physical resources within the cloud vendor's environment. Whereas dedicated still means you're using their services and their hardware, but no one else is sharing it. So you've got a dedicated physical infrastructure for your use only. And we can take it even further. There are clouds just for government. They are completely isolated physically, not just logically. So we have government data centers under Azure as well. And so you decide and you choose the combination. So of course with shared cloud, it's much lower cost. Dedicated is slightly higher, but neither one of them require any maintenance on the hardware. You're turning that over to the cloud vendor. Now the private cloud is what we're already using in most cases. Basically, that's a newer term for the older concept of just running your own computers. You can also simulate a public cloud in your own data center, but you're still entirely responsible for all the physical assets, the networking, the machines, the building itself. But it does give you a tremendous amount of flexibility because you're in complete control. So usually it comes down to how much control do you really need? How much control are you willing to pay for? Because you will have capital expenditures, even continuing with the private cloud, and also with a hybrid cloud, but not nearly as high, hopefully. So the hybrid cloud is a combination of the two. It's usually driven because you may not be, maybe due to regulatory requirements or concerns of your customers, that they don't want to have any sensitive data put in areas that they don't understand, or they may not appreciate the concepts of security in the cloud yet. Or it may be that you've got a proprietary system that's not going to benefit at all by moving to the cloud because you still have to manage the VMs or the virtual machines in the cloud as well. So if it's extra sensitive data that you just want to be able to say that we control that on-prem, then keep it on-prem. Keep it on your own premises in your own data center. But still, the services that may even use that data or access that data can still be extended to the cloud. And that'll allow you to take advantage of services without having capital expenditures. So that's becoming probably the most common implementation is a hybrid cloud environment. And if you've already moved to Microsoft 365 or Office 365, you're already in that situation because you're leveraging services in the cloud called Microsoft 365, but you still may have many of your resources on premises. And you may be considering now moving some of that content to the cloud as well into Microsoft Azure Cloud Services. Now, what are the three types of cloud services typically? These are major categories. They tend to be broken down too into other subcategories. But let's look at infrastructure, platform, and software as a service. IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS. Infrastructure as a service means you still want to retain the control over virtual machines and virtual networks. And sometimes this is referred to as just lift and shift to the cloud. The same virtual machines that you may have running in your own data center, or you're going to keep them exactly the way they are. You just don't want to host them in your own physical environment. So you take those exact same VMs, lift them to the cloud without much change at all, and then they can run in VMs in Microsoft's data center, and you simply access them over the network. This can be the quickest way to move to the cloud, but it doesn't take advantage of some of the services that are in the next category, platform as a service. Platform as a service gives you the services you need to build, test, deploy, and run your own applications. For example, a website, a web application. Why would you need to manage the virtual machine of a web server when you already have a platform that's ready to be used? So moving to platform as a service means you no longer even have to manage the VMs. You no longer have to manage the physical assets. Now this is abstracted away so that all you're focusing on is on your application that you're building and running. Most of the platforms as a service have no access to the underlying virtual machines or virtual networks. You're just given an endpoint to the service and you interact with that service either through the Azure web portal or through code, script. Now to move even further away in the sense of abstraction, maybe we just want to use software that's already built or some other vendor or third-party created software that they want to expose over the cloud. Well, that's exactly where Microsoft 365 comes into play. What we'll be looking at today is a SaaS solution, SaaS. It's Office 365, Word, Excel, Outlook, OneDrive, Exchange, ready to be used. It's a matter of just paying for the subscription. And then also some of the tools can be used in the cloud or they can be used on your local machine. So this, of course, presents a hybrid environment where not only you may be working with data that you have locally, but then you can work through a browser. You can also work through it through applications that are installed on devices, whether they're Windows, iOS, Apple devices, Android devices. All of them are available because this is software as a service. You have no control over the logic in the application. You're not designing this. It's already been designed for you. Now, these are the Microsoft products that are mentioned here, but there are many third-party applications that are also being deployed as software as a service, making it very easy for you just to sign up and use it. It's already done. So here are the three different areas to consider when moving to a cloud vendor. Are you simply going to host virtual machines, set up virtual networks? That would be infrastructure as a service. Do you not want to have to worry about the infrastructure? You just want to build an app. So developers usually focus on the middle one. They want to host or build an application just by picking a platform. Or the last one, usually for business users, they just simply want to subscribe to a product or an application they know that works. So old standbys you've been trusting for years, such as Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Power BI, OneDrive, email with Exchange. It's based simply on a subscription, and just start using it. So from an end user perspective, it doesn't feel that much different than an application that's being hosted on-prem within your own data center. Everything just shifted to Microsoft's data centers, and they can be hosted not only the platform as a service, software as a service, infrastructure as a service, over 50 or more, 60 locations around the world. You can choose where you want to store the content when working with Azure, as well as Microsoft 365. So again, we're going to be focusing on the last one for Microsoft 365. These are not independent cloud services computing models. They actually build on top of each other. And it also indicates what responsibility you have as a customer as to which one you may work with. Notice on premises is completely blank on the far right. That means there is no abstraction. You're dealing with all of the hardware, the infrastructure, the operating systems, the services running on the operating systems, the applications that are hosted. So you are responsible for all of it. None of it would run in the cloud. But on the far left, everything is abstracted away. Software as a service lets you access the applications, keeps your data in the cloud, it's running in the cloud. The OS, the virtualization, server storage, network, everything is cloud-based. If you want to continue managing your own VMs, notice the third column here, you're going to be able to eliminate the last 4 expenses. You're not going to have to deal with the physical storage, the physical servers, the physical networking, and you don't even have to really deal with installing the virtualization on the physical environments. You basically pick packaged virtualization ready to go. But notice what's missing under infrastructure as a service. You have to decide on an operating system, the middleware, the application, the databases, everything else falls under your responsibility. So software as a service abstracts away all of this, and that's why Microsoft 365 is much easier to just jump in and start using it, especially tools that you're already familiar with. Now, if we take the example of a web application can be hosted on premises. You may have intranet web apps right now that are running within your organization on your own web servers. Well, the first thing you could consider is why don't we just lift those VMs straight into infrastructure as a service and still manage the same VMs? That can be done, but only should be done if it's a proprietary setup and you need complete control over those web servers. Otherwise, move it to platform as a service, where the operating system, the middleware, the platform that you're building on is already there. You just pick the platform and put your application on top of that. Or simply leverage what Microsoft has already built. So the interfaces for the products within Office 365 are all web-based. Everything from SharePoint to Word to OneDrive, they're all web apps hosting the content with software as a service. So what do we need to consider when we are looking at moving to cloud computing? Well, there's some very important considerations. These are the 3 major categories. One is privacy. You may be bound by certain laws and regulations that prohibit how data can be used, how it's collected, what is its intent. Several things that are mentioned right here on this slide is if you're in the healthcare industry, then you have to be very familiar with the legal requirements of HIPAA, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, or Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, or EU privacy laws. There are quite a few regulations that you need to be aware of in each industry as to whether you're in compliance, and some of the compliance deals directly with privacy, like GDPR in the European Union. So we need to make sure that we are following the regulations that we're bound by. So your cloud service provider needs to be helpful in saying that it is in compliance with certain regulations and whether they need to be activated within your tenant to help you keep track of what you should or should not be doing. So we want to make sure that you understand the cloud service provider's privacy notices and how they handle different notices. So this is not specific to any one vendor, but even with Azure, you need to make sure that you are comfortable with Microsoft's commitment to privacy, providing ways to be in compliance with regulatory requirements, and that your data is being protected. So understanding each of the services that are in Azure or AWS with Amazon, whatever, make sure that they're following what you need for your requirements, such as encryption. Is data being encrypted while it's being stored? Is it encrypted while it's being moved around or in transit? Specific laws and regulations may require something as technically specific as those concepts, and you need to be aware of what those services are. The benefits, though, in many ways far outweigh some of the concerns, so they need to be carefully considered, such as cost effective. Instead of having to invest in hardware up front, until we had cloud computing, that was one of the first things that most businesses had to consider. If you're starting up a new business, what is all the equipment that you need? The building, the location, the hardware, the servers, and support staff. Well, with cloud computing, you only pay for what you need. So if you're not using anything up front, you're not really paying for any resources yet. So instead of paying for hardware or even paying for a predefined amount of resources that you think you're going to use, you only pay for what you actually use. One of the biggest advantages too is its scalability, the elasticity of cloud computing. You can scale up and you can scale out. This is known as vertical or horizontal scaling. Vertical means you're adding more resources to, say, an existing server or machine. So if you've got a single machine that you're paying for in the cloud, you can increase its RAM, you can increase its number of CPUs, increase storage. All of that is scaling up for a single instance. Horizontal scaling means I need more of the same. So if I already have a particular machine with a certain size CPU and memory, I just need another one like it. Now, horizontal scaling or scaling out can be easier to implement and more desirable too, in that many of the services have that built in so that you can automatically scale out and scale back in. Scaling up is more likely a deliberate request for more resources without copying or creating a number of instances. And that means too, you're committing to a higher price per instance. So if you're going to increase memory or add more CPUs, then of course, there'll be an extra charge for that. Horizontal scaling says, I don't really need to scale up any one machine. I just temporarily need another one like it. So I can go from one machine to 2 to 5 to 20 to 50, and then scale right back as the demand levels off or completely disappears. So it's that elastic capability that allows you to handle spikes and drops in demand down to zero. So at certain times of the day, the week, the year, whatever it is, when activity may drop off completely, you can have your resources scale back to almost nothing. Another big plus is it's always up to date. There really is no versioning of these services in the cloud. Every so often there may be a major change, and they'll provide you the option to go with a major change or not, and they may refer to that as a version, but most of the changes are simply constantly upgraded. So the physical environment is always being upgraded without necessarily notifying you of any of that. Or it may be that new operating systems are being upgraded, new patches apply, security patching, all of that is being done for you automatically if you use platform as a service or software as a service. If you're using infrastructure as a service, then always up to date is dependent on you. The only thing that will be up to date with infrastructure as a service will be the physical hardware. That's something Microsoft has committed to keeping, up to date for you. And it is reliable. You have the option of choosing different levels of redundancy. So if one area goes down, it can easily be pick up the load somewhere else. You can replicate data, for example, to 2 or 3 physical locations. You can also create failover scenarios where if you have a disaster in one area, it will automatically fail over to a new area. You could have disaster recovery for your on-prem environment. So if you lose your data center on premises, it will automatically fail over to an exact copy in the cloud. That's the disaster recovery that's built into cloud services. Now, those kind of situations, though, have to be carefully chosen because you don't necessarily want the highest availability, the highest redundancy in all cases. So it's left up to you where you want to choose that and create a more reliable environment. This also contributes toward empowering your employees. So as you go through different changes and transformations, this can be done more quickly and easily, depending on what levels and types of services that you can use. Now, they're also pinpointing particular types of workers. We have information workers and first-line workers. I think it's funny the picture they use for first-line workers. It doesn't look like anybody's working. They're looking out the window, talking to each other or whatever. But when we talk about information workers, these are the office roles working with accounting, management, administration, not necessarily dealing with customers directly. First-line workers would be those that are handling your customers, repair technicians, service professionals, those that really basically drive the business. They are in the forefront. So they need tools to be able to do that as quickly as possible. So Microsoft 365 targets, of course, these types of employees to make things as easy as possible to get it up and running with a more modern approach with everything being cloud-based. Now, again, there are a couple of slides in here, especially for knowledge check. What I'm going to go through these is I'm going to skip some of these, but want to make sure that you understood the concepts here. So which term from the list below would be viewed as a benefit of using cloud services? Unpredictable cost, elasticity, local reach only. Well, that one's probably the more obvious one. It's that elasticity. Why would you choose anything if it's unpredictable cost? Some people feel that way about cloud services, but that's usually because they're not monitoring them carefully. They may be over provisioning, under provisioning, but you do have predictable costs in the cloud. It just means that you have to monitor it and choose exactly what you need. But it's that elasticity that gives you the flexibility. Maybe you do need higher costs to handle a spike. Or you may need to have lower costs because there's a drop-off in activity for a particular service. So the answer to this question would be elasticity. All right, let me move through some of these and get right into lesson 2. We're still in module 1, but now we're going to focus in on that one product, software as a service, Microsoft 365. What is it? Microsoft 365 is a recent name which encompasses Office 365. So we stopped using the term Office 365 because that was a more narrow focus on just a few of the Office products. It is still available as a product that we think of the Office suite, but it's under or part of Microsoft 365. So Microsoft 365 is a much broader product, and it comes in, of course, different levels of subscription. It includes, of course, those very well-known products of Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook. But now it's got an interesting concept here of including Windows and Teams and SharePoint. So we're going beyond the original limited view of Office and actually including the operating system now and managing devices and making sure, for example, that certain devices that are hosting Windows can be managed through Microsoft 365. So Microsoft 365 is not just a new name for Office. It includes Office 365 and much more. The different areas that we're going to look at, the first one is productivity and teamwork capabilities. Of course, productivity means doing as much as we possibly can with the tools we know well. So of course that includes Word and Excel and PowerPoint. We know those well. So this class is not about those individual products. We also are very comfortable with calendars and email. So that continues to be supported with Outlook. And then we also need storage. We have two primary ways of storing content. OneDrive, which allows us to synchronize a local copy of files with the cloud and vice versa. We also have SharePoint. And we also have ways of chatting and instant messaging and working with a social network with Yammer and Teams. We can also get information from the Microsoft environment through another product called Microsoft Graph. This continues to be updated with more information that can be available to you within the organization and introducing AI techniques in order to get that information to you that you may be interested in based on how you work, what you are working with. It will try to help bring some of that content together as well. Business management capabilities. Managing from an IT perspective means managing those devices, not just mobile phones and tablets, but actual desktops as well. Automation through workflows that are hosted in SharePoint, Power Automate. Extending the functionality that's built into the apps, including Word and Excel. We can extend the functionality by building apps that depend on those services. Extending it through Teams, Power Platform, creating our own forms and workflow. And then probably one of the most popular areas right now is extracting data for business intelligence. We have Power BI. We also have a good old Excel. It's still able to work with quite a bit of data and give us some intelligence in the type of data that we're collecting. And then something newer that is being incorporated based on AI is work analytics and my analytics. Workplace analytics is a broad view of what's happening with all of the users and employees that could be using the services. So management can be able to see how the different services are being used. But my analytics is private, personal, letting you know how you're using the services in Office and the rest of Microsoft 365. We have work management too with Planner, which is a simplified project management concept without having full Microsoft project. And it will include security and compliance capabilities. We won't go into as much detail about those topics. We'll see them mentioned throughout this seminar here, though. Personal productivity and organizational productivity. Personal productivity, using the tools that we're comfortable with and also collaborating with others. Being able to use these tools on any device, whether you've got an iPhone, an Android tablet, Windows desktop, all of it can be integrated and working together. And then also organizational productivity, harnessing the knowledge that is within your organization. We talked about workplace analytics. We also talked about managing devices, but also with Teams and SharePoint, we can also share that information organizationally. The different ways to get Microsoft 365 are divided up into 4 major categories. Enterprise, business, education, and home. Enterprise now comes in 3 different implementations: E3, E5, and F3, letting you choose which one is going to be the most appropriate. But this is for large businesses. And large in this case means over 300 licenses needed, whereas the business, the second, is up to 300. So for small or medium-sized organizations where you need to use maybe just 100 copies of these licenses, or up to 300, that's going to be ideal for business. And education, basically providing a different approach for educators and students, and creating licenses that fit the particular institution, whether we're talking about universities or high school, elementary school, etc. And then finally, home, using Microsoft 365 at home, personal office home. Usually we think of that, or student for that matter, is only the minimum features that are necessary, usually including the office suite. And of course, there are different price ranges for each one of these. And of course, the highest level of capabilities and services will be for the enterprise. So sign up for a free trial to get an idea of how this all works. You can sign up at Microsoft 365. There's a link here. Sign up for free trial. Now, you were given a copy of these slides as well as the course material, but just as a quick demonstration here, let me just show you the slide real quick where it took me to. Signup.microsoft.com. Let's set up your account. Go through the entire step, and you will get the business premium license for a limited period, and get a good feel for it. This is a 30-day sign up for free, and then after that, whether you want to continue with it or maybe even move on to an enterprise level if it's for a larger business. Okay, I'm going to skip some of these review questions. Still have quite a bit more to go. So in this third lesson, let's look at cloud deployment. What we've already discussed: hybrid model, which to choose, and migration to Microsoft 365. As we've already stated, the hybrid model usually implies that you're moving partly to the cloud, but you may have on-premise requirements where you may have to continue using line of business systems, proprietary systems that may not even be virtualized as a virtual machine to start with. But we might want to move some of the on-premise resources to the cloud, or we may just want to take advantage of Microsoft 365 and keep most of our services currently back on-prem. Completely up to you how you combine on-prem with cloud online services. How do you choose? Well, which one is the most important to you? Cost savings, security, reliability, and compliance, or just the functionality that's available? These are only important based on your requirements. Which one of these are more important? Cost savings or functionality or security, compliance, etc. So the more complex the organization, it could be the middle one becomes that much more critical because that becomes that much more difficult to manage. For a startup company, probably cost savings is going to be the most important. Other considerations: have you already invested recently in hardware? Have you already upsized, say, your data center, and you're not ready to throw anything out? Or it could be you haven't updated anything in a while, and you know you're reaching end of life cycle for some of your hardware as well as your software. Or you're very limited in personnel. You don't have the administrators or the IT resources to manage a data center. And then, of course, the last one, money, available capital. Can you really outlay a large amount of sum for physical assets to improve, say, outdated hardware and software? Or can you now start moving to the cloud and start shifting your workloads to the cloud and only pay for what you need? Migrating to 365 usually implies that you've already been using a certain version of Office. You may be using Office 2007, Office 2020, or 2010, and looking to move to Office 2020. So you've got some considerations here why you might need to upgrade, primarily because these products become outdated and no longer supported. Like Office 2007 isn't supported at all. And 2010 is no longer supported as of this year. So are you going to upgrade individual copies on your machines in your office, or are you going to move to Microsoft 365 and manage the Office instances through the cloud? You can migrate completely, or you can use what's called coexistence. You may have a different requirement on-prem and gradually are moving others to the cloud, and you may need to coexist between both environments for a while, particularly things like maybe email or SharePoint. You may have a SharePoint server, Office server. Okay, that's really it for Module 1, giving you a quick introduction. In our first of 3 modules. And what I'd like to do here is take a short break as we move into our next module. And that will be module number 2, productivity and teamwork. And we're going to get more specific to and what services are available under module 2.
Tom, how long would you like to take for that break?
10 minutes.
Okay, wonderful. We will go ahead and start that now.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go ahead and jump right back into this. I'm gonna hand you back the presentation rights, Tom, and you should be able to get started. I hope everybody had a chance to stretch their legs, refresh their coffee, and we should be good to go. You're muted still, Tom. There we go.
Thank you. I was about to say, I cannot unmute myself. Got it. All right, let's move now into module 2. Now, just as a reminder, in case you were late joining us, that these modules are taken from the Microsoft course, the MS 900, which is the introduction or fundamental course for Microsoft 365. And this is a high-level, brief overview, not nearly as slow and deliberate as you would get in a class, but just to give you a high-level view of what the class is about and what these topics are. So module 2 is now going to focus just on Microsoft 365. As we've talked about in the previous module, this is software as a service. So leaving the concepts of everything else in Azure, like we're not talking about infrastructure as a service or platform as a service, but focusing now on Microsoft 365 and what it brings to the table. Of course, we're all familiar with the products of the Office suite, so that is naturally included. We're going to be seeing too what other services are included throughout the next 2 modules with Microsoft 365. So looking at areas such as what the simple needs of email and chat, storage, sharing content, how do each of these products fit in? So we're going to start with the major areas of the intent that Microsoft has with these products. And of course, the goal here is to improve productivity. What business doesn't want to improve productivity? So using the apps that make that possible, keep the employees engaged, which is, of course, in the last year has been a very crucial concept with everyone working from home. How do we stay engaged as remote workers? Well, we heavily depend on online meetings and chat and instant messaging and email. So those are all the services, of course, that are included and being ramped up even in the last year. So we have products like Teams and Outlook and SharePoint and OneNote to provide most of these capabilities, such as storing and sharing files and synchronizing those files to our local machine. And being able to work from anywhere, literally from anywhere, if you've got a network connection, at least getting the content you need to work with, but then even going offline and working with only on your local device. We also are seeing ways to improving ways to engage employees. Now, this is really a new product announcement that they've inserted right here within this course, and this is announcing Microsoft Viva. Microsoft Viva was announced back in February, but it's slowly taking shape to help bring more and more of the collaboration and the concepts of engaging employees under one product name. They're referring to this as an employee experience platform. Not only is it going to help keep up with how users are working, how you personally are working, so you can look at your own personal analysis called My Analytics. But remember, we also looked at the workplace analytics. This is being wrapped up into this new product called Insights. So you have analytics, nudges, surveys, feedback, sentiment to try to get the underlying feel of what's going on with everyone, which could have been very helpful, through the pandemic, but now it becomes much more obvious that these are things we need feedback on. And at the same time, keeping it private, anonymous, so anyone reviewing the aggregate results would not be able to identify any individual or personal response. But of course, you would get to see your own personal insights and any personal nudges, maybe reminding you that you've been sitting too long. You need to just get up, stretch, move around, or whatever. So they're going to try to incorporate certain guidelines too for physical, mental, and emotional, financial well-being. One of my favorites, though, is they're going to now include learning directly within Microsoft Viva, connecting with different learning organizations around the world, and being able to channel that content directly into Teams. So for all training companies, this is definitely something to be alert to see how they're going to be incorporating that within Microsoft Viva. So announcements, news, events, and maybe a shift in what you may think of as intranet sites, because this will also host, say, a home page or a starting point for your whole organization. Recruiting, onboarding, career direction. So some of the HR concepts can be incorporated within Viva. Again, this is a brand new product, and we'll start to see, how this is going to be available. Let me give you a link to this right off of the, let's see. I'll drop this in the chat to everyone. Or can I? Maybe I can't. Leela, I'm just going to send it straight to you if you can make sure.
Yeah, you can send it straight to me, and I'll drop it in the chat for everyone.
Great. Thank you very much. So back to some of the basics too. Microsoft Teams provides one of the things we've been very dependent on, and that is simply chat. Being able to chat one-on-one with anyone in a private chat, chatting with an entire group, our whole project team, and carrying on either text-based conversations, switching to audio conversations, and even switching to video conferencing, all within the same interface. Chat, as well as some of the other features in Teams, can help eliminate email clutter. One of my probably downfalls is I can't keep up with the email. I cannot keep up with the hundreds and hundreds of emails that you get on a daily basis, because a lot of them are legit. It's just a matter of communicating with more and more people. So trying to eliminate that as much as possible and using other tools can make you more productive. We can share screens, we can play videos, we can see each other while we're talking. Messages in real time, of course, audio and teleconferencing can be real time, and we can share files asynchronously. You can associate files to a chat or a team so that everyone can share documents or files that are specific to that chat. We can host online meetings and keep track of particular metrics that are important to us, as shown here. Keep up with the whole life cycle of a meeting. What is the agenda? Who do we invite? Are we going to invite only internal or external guests? Can we provide notes up front? Can we record it? Or can we provide a recording from the previous meeting? Can we use video, or is it simply going to be audio? Share content, record or not record, stream it over to media so it can be reviewed over and over again. And of course, scheduling your next meeting. There's also specific meeting devices that can be used. Live events can host up to 10,000 people within Teams. Audio conferencing, especially for those that may not have Teams on a particular device, they can simply connect by phone. And then there are one-touch devices, as mentioned on the far right, that you can work with certain certified partners such as Logitech, Lenovo, Polycom, HP, and set up rooms that allow you to have teleconferencing if and when we go back to conference rooms. Email and calendaring. It's a tough one. So with this, we think more of Outlook. So we have all of this in one place. Outlook online or Outlook on your desktop, Outlook on your phone, Outlook on devices, a Microsoft application that helps synchronize your emails, calendars, and contact information across all devices. I don't know what I'd do without it. With my Android phone, my Surface tablet, my 4 desktops, my laptop, they're all synchronized. So I don't have to worry about what I have in front of me. I know that I can access any and all of this repeatedly, multiple accounts at the same time. Customize your email, not just with signatures, but the whole format, images, your domain name, etc. You also have what's called legal discovery and compliance that can be supported with Microsoft 365, particularly if you need to track down maybe an email that did not necessarily have a document attached to it, but it could be used maybe in legal defense or something. So you can have that locked, have it available to you as part of e-discovery services built into Microsoft 365. Your contacts can be pulled in from any number of locations, particularly your internal contents, external, LinkedIn profiles, all of that is available to you through the Outlook and Exchange services. And across all devices is not just a marketing term. This really is available to you either through a browser or through different platforms. So Outlook, Word, Excel, PowerPoint they all have different applications for both Apple, Android, and Microsoft devices. They're always up to date. There really is no version of any one of these. They're constantly being updated on a regular basis. So new features may appear. You may be notified, of course, depending on what you subscribe to, or you may want to stay in touch with the roadmap with the different Office products. Always up to date is a great benefit so that you can be sure, especially if you have multiple devices, one is just as current as another. Now, it could be, though, they have updates that roll out maybe for an iOS Apple device at one point, and they may have another update for an Android device at a different time, but they're going to be up to date based on the state of that application deployed by Microsoft. And then file storage. OneDrive has really come to the forefront as one of the best ways of storing information in the cloud and choosing what you want to synchronize back on your own machines or any number of machines. So regardless of whether it was originally from one machine, you can synchronize it up to the cloud, and then it will be available to another device if it chooses to download it. It does not automatically push files to the desktop or any other device, especially if you have limited storage. You don't want to say upload 70 gigs from one device and then you can't even hold that much data on another, but you can individually pick and download individual files as needed from anywhere. Collaborate, one of the best new features for collaboration is everyone working on the same document simultaneously. Whether you're working with OneNote or Word or Excel, you can co-author a document in a meeting or even asynchronously, maybe not in the meeting. And you have secure sharing as well. These files are secured based on the identity of the user trying to access it and what permissions have been assigned to that person. Remember, all of this is still hosted in Azure, and Azure is using primarily Azure Active Directory for identity and applying permissions. You also can choose who to share content with, and it can even be outside guests that are not part of your tenant. So not only for storage, but for sharing and collaborating is built into particularly OneDrive and SharePoint content as well. Good point here about accessibility. The mission to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. There's over 1 billion people in the world with disabilities. So Microsoft is focused on providing multiple ways of providing accessibility to different applications. So for vision, it could be that someone has low vision or colorblind or blind. And so particularly for colorblind or low vision, we may be able to boost contrast, change the color scheme, or remove color entirely so we can see what it appears in a monochromatic format. We also can rely on Tell Me. Tell Me allows you to find content We also have audio-based technology for helping people that are blind to understand their surroundings, what is available to them from around where they're working. And of course, like we've seen too, reading the content straight off of the screen. For anyone that has hearing impairments, we can translate content. So even with a perfect hearing, you may have a different language background. So audience members can choose a language they want the captions to be shown in a presentation. We can also auto-generate captions when something is being streamed. Now that only is supported in English and Spanish right now, but once that's transcribed, then you can translate it as a second step. And partial hearing loss or deafness in one ear can be difficult to listen to if it's in a stereo format. So you can switch to mono audio so that both speakers play exactly the same sounds and nothing would be lost by being maybe partially deaf. There also may be those that are dyslexic. They're prone to seizures, autism, other cognitive differences. We might need to change visual aspects of a device. We may also need to block alerts and notifications to avoid triggering distractions, or even, again, have your documents read. For learning issues, you may need to, again, stay focused, have some tools for helping hold concentration, improve reading and writing skills. Particularly with writing, we all need help with our grammatical mistakes. So Editor in Word can help us correct spellings at a minimum, look for other suggestions of how something could be changed in how it's written, constructing sentences and text. And then for mobility, some may have difficult, even using a keyboard or a mouse. So we do have Dictate to convert speech to text, supporting 20 languages for dictation, and then translation in 60 languages. And then back to that same concept we saw earlier, tell me what you want to do. So several things that are built in, reminder again of reducing animations, color, animation can also be very distracting, block alerts. So finding the right combination is probably more difficult than being concerned about if it's possible or not. So definitely for any accessibility concerns that you may have, be sure to look at Microsoft's accessibility site. Here are the ones I just covered. 6 accessibility investments used in Microsoft 365. All right, I'm going to skip through some of these, well, all of them actually. And now we're going to focus in on 3 other products, Teams, Yammer, and again, maybe a quick overview of Viva again, where they're headed with that. So we're going to see some other features in Teams, finding more and more Microsoft users are using Teams for collaboration and simple chatting. But we also have the concept of channels, which can be a centralized point for teams that have been assigned to work together to keep track of what has happened, and usually asynchronously, and keeping up with files, schedules, and whatever else you may add to that channel. Instant messaging and chat, one-on-one again, or or many in a group. Voice and video calls. And we'll see too how it implements features for security and compliance. There are interactive guides available to you in the slides you see here. You hopefully got a copy of the slides. There is a PDF file that's separate from the slides, but you should also receive these PPT files. Scheduling and joining meetings, multi-party meetings, meeting devices, content sharing, all of this is supported now within Teams. A team is basically just a logical term, a collection of people that are working together. These teams can be private, they can be public, and a team may have one or more channels where they can discuss specific aspects of their work. You also can facilitate other tabs in channels. So if there's certain areas that you need to work on, maybe there's a specific app or a specific website that you'd like everyone to be able to access within that channel, the channels can be customized for that purpose. You also can decide how long content will be kept. If you want Teams to be more of a temporary working environment where content may be only kept for 30 days or 90 days or whatever, make sure that's clearly communicated, because that just keeps the most active content available, and you may want to move it somewhere else for more permanent storage. Maybe moving it to a SharePoint site, or again, sticking strictly within Teams and expanding that or extending the lifetime of the content in your channels for your teams. As we all know, especially in this year of Zoom, Teams has been gradually copying some of the favorite features that people have with other tools like Zoom. So being able to show a gallery view of everyone in a meeting can be kind of fun. Custom backgrounds with predefined backgrounds, or you can upload your own images and videos, or simply blurring the background. Sharing meeting notes. Also being confident that everything is being encrypted and that it already meets several regulatory standards and laws when using Teams. And that brings us back to Viva again. I was saying this earlier, it's kind of hard to say Viva without saying Las Vegas, but Microsoft Viva is a new endeavor to bring together other tools that have been around a while under one category. And here are the 4 different topics they're currently starting with, is to provide insight, topics, learning, and connections. So insights is bringing together workplace analytics. That's the one where maybe managers and executives can see from a high-level view how everyone's working without any identity of individuals. And My Analytics lets you see how you are working that no one else can see. And then another product called Glint, which Microsoft is incorporating together to provide what they're now referring to as insights instead of just analytics. Topics is so that you can rely on AI actually to bring together topics that are keeping everyone connected, keeping you informed of who may be, we've seen this before, as in experts on a topic, content on a topic. So help identify where the knowledge is kept and who the experts would be, for discussing a certain topic. Now, experts can deliberately create or curate information for this purpose by creating Viva topics and creating topic pages. And of course, this is going to be very similar to what you could do manually now with SharePoint. To me, the most exciting one is the third one, to discover informal and formal learning during the flow of your work. If there's a particular topic you've been investigating, it may also suggest, here's a training course you might want to look at. So discover and share training courses that, of course, Microsoft will be leveraging their own Microsoft Learn content. LinkedIn Learning will be incorporated, and other content providers such as Skillsoft, Coursera, Pluralsight, and edX. It is open, of course, for other vendors to channel their content into this product. So if a informal or formal learning, which can include internal content that you'd like to make available through the learning category under Microsoft Viva. And then there's connections. Basically, this is all the content brought together, everything we've maybe going on within Viva, so that there be one common destination, a customized, this is where I was saying maybe a home page, a branded app for all employees, keeping them up to date with what's happening in the organization or your company. These are the first 4 attempts. It is open, extensible, and they no doubt will add to this. See how well this takes off in the next few months. Okay, again, here's some more interactive learning clips that you can go. It's not just a video, it's actually where they're telling you to click here or click there, select something to see how it moves through the whole process, managing meetings through Teams. All right, these are others we've already discussed. Now, what about Yammer then? Yammer has got quite a bit of overlap with Teams. And so some companies may only use Teams, or they may only be using Yammer, but rarely do I see that it's being heavily used in, both are heavily used in the same organization. But there is a slight difference between the two. Yammer is a social network tool within your organization to connect people that may not normally work together. So remember, Teams is designed to focus on those that do work together. So it's a formal team setup, a formal channel. So you may be able to discover and work with others using Yammer within the Microsoft 365 environment. So it's a network of people as part of a full single organization. So you can find those that you may want to collaborate with, and that may be the same ones that you already have team with, or you may plan on forming a team with those that you work with in Yammer. So one of the things too that has been completely replaced, that is not even mentioned anymore here in this course, is Skype for Business. Skype for Business was completely replaced by Microsoft Teams. And so there were several competing features, again, with Skype and Yammer. So we may see some things blend, but Yammer is still being used as a separate tool, maybe at a preference too, with certain employees. So this is a less formal approach to working together and relying on the social networking capabilities. Yammer also provides other things such as being able to create org charts, member directories. You can set up polls very easily, tags, and many of these things are being added to Teams and may eventually replace Yammer. And just like with the other products, we do have usage reports to let us know who and how these products are being used. And then we have Microsoft Stream. Microsoft Stream is an excellent way to record and inventory videos for learning and communication. In fact, when you record a meeting in Teams, you could have it automatically be added to Stream. Or the video could be just kept in the channel. It has everything to do with how much you want to share a video, if it needs to be kept private or just within a limited group, or if it is put in Stream, it still can be protected with certain security permissions, but it's a way of providing a channel to stream your videos for anyone in the organization. So you can upload, watch, share videos, all within Microsoft 365. So with Stream, we can present content to up to 10,000 people with live events, with presentations. We can also create surveys and polls for the videos and add captions to the videos automatically. Well, of course, to find the content, we would need to set up different channels. Now, the term channel here is not the same as a team channel. This is for video channels, very much like you think of as a YouTube channel, to categorize and organize content within Microsoft 365. And just like with everything else, we do have usage reports, we have audit logs, so you can investigate, monitor all activities in Microsoft Stream. You also can discover content. Now, this is interesting in that the videos, remember, can be transcribed. You'll get captions automatically generated, and that will also be used by the search. So when you're doing a search for a video, you could actually be searching for a video of someone speaking in a certain meeting, because not only is it recording audio, of course, it's also transcribing it to words and indicating who said what and when. So that way you can actually find specific content from a meeting that someone said something about a certain topic. Incredibly valuable. You know you heard it, but you can't figure out who said it and when it was said. But by creating a transcript and doing a search across that transcript, you'll be able to find the content and where it's said, where it has been said. It actually returns a timeline, a picture of the person that spoke, giving you a timeline with little blurbs or indications of when something was said. And so you can see quickly who talks more than someone else, or who has made no comments at all during the whole meeting. And that has saved me quite a bit personally with trying to find something. I know I heard it from someone, but I can't remember where. I didn't take specific notes, and being able to find it to get the specific wording. Now, within Teams, we can extend it by introducing other apps and even web pages. Notice in this screenshot, across the top, what's underlined, we see it's right up there with other tabs. So general is a general channel for everyone to access, but it also has post, files, wiki, and then something underlined, customer 360. This could be a Power BI report or dashboard, so that someone does not have to navigate to a Power BI service. They can just click on the tab inside Teams and see the content immediately. This could even be a website. Maybe it's an application that you're all working together on, and you've got a QA site or a usability site that you'd like to show right in Teams. So embed web pages, applications. You can even create bots that can interact with the users. We have Power Virtual Agents that create those chat bots that can be connected to Teams and through channels. Another feature too is the Power Apps that you can generate to interact with, and Power Automate to automate tasks that could be triggered from Teams, or the results could be seen in Teams. You also can connect to third-party apps or just basic webhooks, being able to communicate to a REST HTTP endpoint. Either incoming or outgoing data can be passed. And now Team has what's called connectors. So you can receive alerts. A very common one would be in a DevOps process, where you may have developers working together on teams about what they're writing and designing and collaborating, but at the same time connecting it to Azure DevOps or GitHub to let you know when a build was successful or a build fails and someone needs to address it. All of that staying within Teams. So some great stuff is happening in Teams, integrating with other products and other services. Always stay in touch. Once you get in connected to Microsoft 365, you will be informed with changes through a Microsoft 365 roadmap. I usually let it collect, or maybe go to it through an admin center, but it's always fascinating reading what's happening, what's coming in the next 3 months, how are things changing here and there, and what you need to do about it if you want it or don't want it. Oh, here's an example of what I was just talking about, extending Teams with message extensions and bots. Here's one. It's called being informed when something is in, there's a low stock in inventory, or store temporarily closed. These are types of alerts that you need to be aware of, or if you need to be aware of and respond to something quickly. And here's an example too of using the Power Platform. This interface is providing information through Teams, but notice at the top it's a budget tracker that is available to anyone that may be connected through this channel. Now, it is possible to put a link in Teams that everyone in the channel would not have permission to access. That can be quite irritating. So do your homework and make sure that if you are going to post links in Teams, make sure they're visible to those that can use it, if at all possible, or you may need to create a sub-channel or a different group so that you don't have tabs across the top that may only be for power users, or I should say administrators. Third-party apps, well, by simply browsing the available apps your administrators have made available to you would allow you to choose any other apps, and particularly those outside apps that Microsoft has created, any third-party apps and connectors. All right. These are all really good questions, but again, these are available to you in the PPTs that you get with the class. Lesson 3. What else can we look at? We're going to look at the other apps, Microsoft 365 apps, and how we can update, keep them up to date, and not have to be concerned about constantly checking and deploying new applications. So what are the Microsoft 365 apps? Well, we've already talked about Teams and a little bit about man, my mind just went blank. OneDrive, that cloud on the far right. So Teams and OneDrive. Of course, the others are obvious. Excel, Word, Outlook, PowerPoint. The standard apps that you find in the Office suite. Within each of these products, there is a concept of keeping them up to date and also leveraging cloud-based services. You may not have discovered these yet if you're already using Microsoft 365, but if you go into each of the apps, Word, Outlook, Excel, etc., you're going to find that there is an option to use connected experiences. Connected experiences are going to allow you to leverage other things that would only be available through a cloud connection. So, for example, with Word, Excel, Outlook, they all have very specific types of functionality. Maybe with Outlook for a schedule, you might want to include the weather. Well, on a device that's not connected to the internet or a local installation of Outlook, that would not have that capability unless you allowed connected experiences. Now, some of the connected experiences may be individually itemized that you can turn on and off, some not. As you see in this screenshot, all connected experiences, and then a checkbox, enable connected experiences. There also can be support for Word, giving you ideas of how you should rewrite something, what they refer to as neural rewrites, suggesting alternate ways of writing a particular phrase or a word, a synonym, a more powerful word than what you used. All of those coming from some of the AI services out of Microsoft. Designer is a feature in PowerPoint that can suggest design changes based on fonts, colors, or even branded templates. These are available in each of the products. If you go under the File menu, Account Manage Settings, you'll find connected experiences. I recommend you look at it. It may already be activated and you don't realize it, but if it's not, definitely turn it on and look and see what is available to you. And this will continue to be extended over time. They're leveraging more of the AI features and cognitive services that are available through Microsoft 365 and Azure. How can we deploy this? Well, you may have already experienced some of these approaches because this is usually the first step that most people take if they're moving into Azure cloud services, is installing Microsoft 365. What are the different approaches? Well, we have click to run. We also can install from a local source, or we may just connect to a configuration point to download the current branch. Well, what does all that mean? Well, the first one is that we could use the configuration service that comes with Microsoft 365 and create a configuration file and use that through a click to run process that basically says follow this configuration to install it. So that gives you a little bit of control of how you want it to be configured. Specifies settings such as what channel is going to be used, going ahead and approving, or setting up a end user license agreement, and whether to automatically set up updates or not. From a local source can be very useful if not all of your users have internet connection. And that is definitely true for certain what are called privileged access workspaces, PAWs, machines that really should not be connected to the internet because they may have very powerful services or sensitive data, so they're going to stay offline. But you still may need to update something that's running on it. So instead of directly connecting to the internet, you may want to just bring those files down to a local source and installing it deliberately, not over the internet. Or it could be devices do not have a reliable connection to stay connected long enough to install the apps. If you're going to upgrade, it is recommended, like for the last one, to use the current branch under Configuration Manager. Now, Configuration Manager has been around for a while, but it's now been incorporated into what's called Microsoft Endpoint Manager. We'll see a little bit more about that later. How does this work? Well, the updates are going to be provided through different channels. Current channel is approximately every month. So you can see that in the diagram here. Monthly enterprise channel is monthly, but it's the second Tuesday of the month, so you can have a more predictable time when you know you might be hit with an update. You may also use the semi-annual channel. These are, or it's in preview right now, but it will be a much slower rollout, March and September, or the semi-annual enterprise channel, which is January and July, as you see here. If you don't make a decision, current channel will be the default, the one across the top. So that means you're going to have all the apps updated on that schedule as changes come out. And there's two types of changes. There are security updates, anything that has been discovered that needs to be addressed to protect you from potential problems or malicious attacks, or quality updates. Maybe there's been something that's been discovered that affects performance or stability that needs to be fixed. So security updates are usually on the second Tuesday of every month. So notice that correlates to the monthly enterprise. So what used to be called Patch Tuesday, they're trying to, I think, get away from the word patch, but second Tuesday of every month, still going to be called that, I think. It's Update Tuesday. Patch Tuesday, I think, sounds even better, though. So choose the appropriate channel that fits your environment. Now, not all users have to stay within the same channel. For example, you may want some of your help desk personnel or those that need to see what's happening to get an update first. And then maybe the more sensitive areas or the areas that really cannot tolerate change every month, you need to work with a semi-annual update. These also do not have to match the update channel for Windows. That's coming up later. So you could have Office update on a different schedule than Windows itself. Choose a location to update from. The most common is to use an Office CDN. That is a location on the internet. So it's distributed around the world, so not everyone's hitting the same source, but using a CDN. It could be a shared folder on your local network that you've downloaded the update to and everyone can use it. That's very helpful if you're trying to minimize internet traffic. or you can use the configuration manager that you may have been using for several years. The recommendation is to use the CDN because Microsoft already distributes the update around the world to different edge servers in a CDN network. Depending on how much control you need on the local machines, you may want to use the shared folder when you want everyone to start updating. And again, just like you don't have to have everyone on the same schedule, you also don't have to have everyone using the same location of where they're going to be updated from. It is recommended because some of the changes could have an impact on your business, is to create a pilot group who will be able to see what the changes are before you give it to everyone else. So for example, the current channel once a month should be for those that need to be aware of what's happening as soon as possible. And it could be too that certain areas are affected more drastically. So heavy users of certain products, such as Excel, like the finance department, may need to be informed ahead of time, or have a representative from that group get a copy early. All right. Lesson 4, storage. OneDrive or SharePoint? What's your pick? Actually, they can be one and the same. OneDrive, though, solves the problem of knowing where the files are. You can access the files from all devices. Even though the files may not be downloaded to that device, you'll still be able to see it through the OneDrive client running on your device. And if it's a Windows device, it'll show up under the File Explorer. SharePoint is primarily used for collaborating and sharing documents and being able to group them together under, say, a certain project or a certain site. You can also configure OneDrive for what's called a known folder move. Known folder, if you ever notice too, when you go into the file manager, you have the word documents at the top. You've got photos. Those are known folders that are mapped to some other physical specific folder, and you could remap those to point to your OneDrive so that anytime you go into documents, you're actually seeing the OneDrive folder for documents. Or anytime you go into photos, you're seeing a link over to the OneDrive photos. You have a built-in recycle bin you can restore from. You've got real-time collaboration supported through OneDrive, and that's whether you're using a local instance of an app versus a cloud. Both of them can collaborate. And they can be part of attachments, either a copy or a link for, say, your emails or other services. Another concept is called multi-geo. Let's see if that's on the next slide, sorry. Nope. Multi-geo means that you can determine the physical geopolitical location of the data. So it could be data residence requirements. If someone lives in, say, the EU, then their data must be in the EU. Now, I don't know if there's a regulation like that, but if that were a law or a regulation, data that's, in China must stay in China. Whatever the requirements are, you may be bound by a data residency requirement or a preference. And so what you can do is you can specify what's called a preferred data location anywhere in the world that Microsoft has a data center or may need to keep that data available. So you don't have to have it in one particular location for all of your employees, your customers, whoever may be using it. And again, here's another interactive guide. If you did need to set up a new location for known folders. You can migrate Windows known folders such as documents and photos to OneDrive instead of it being a physical location on your system, which is the default. This is quite involved. There's quite a few steps involved here, so take this nice and easy, and of course there's steps online and help for this. And then what about SharePoint? Actually, Teams has been a facade for SharePoint, covering up some of the details of how to you don't have to constantly work with SharePoint. When you're using files in Teams, you're actually indirectly working with a pre-built site for those files, a document library. However, you can also go directly to SharePoint and create a new team site or a communications site. More recently, Microsoft has been pushing what's called the modern experience, a completely new style to SharePoint sites that is actually much better and more intuitive. But it can be quite jarring, though, coming from a classic experience from just a few years ago. Of all the tools, I think in Microsoft 365, there is a bipolar reaction to SharePoint. Either people love it or they hate it. And I think the more technical a person is, the less likely they're going to work with SharePoint. But make sure that when you do use SharePoint, I think it's not the fault of the product, it's the lack of planning that can cause SharePoint to be a monster. So it's quite a powerful tool. This is SharePoint Online, so you're not having to deal with any physical servers. So they refer to it as an evolution from SharePoint Server. Eventually probably not even being supported on-prem as a server, but only within the cloud. Okay, that's it for Module 2, just in time for another break. And so let's take
good. Yeah.
a 10-minute break to the top of the hour.
10 minutes?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, let's go ahead and jump back in it. So we are getting pretty close on time. I know that Tom has so much material to get through. I know you said if 5 minutes was enough, we usually need a little bit closer to 10. Is that possible for you, Tom?
Yeah,
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. Well, let's go ahead and I will pass that screen back over to you and you can get right into it.
all right. Just let me know if you can see module 3 now.
Yes, I can.
Excellent, good. Well, we've been on a whirlwind tour of this, so we're going to speed it up even more. So we've covered some of the most important topics, but module 3 includes business management capabilities. This is less about the functionality of the products and more about how we can implement things that would help the business move and adapt as quickly as possible. So we will see mentions of other products, but also deploying and how to keep track of what's happening within the products. All right, so let's get right into lesson 1. And this is about organizational productivity. Remember, we talked about workplace analytics. We're also going to look at endpoint management, Microsoft Endpoint Manager, or MEM, and the automation of processes. Okay. So we're going to look at organizational productivity, workspace analytics, and Microsoft Secure Store. Now, MEM, or Microsoft Endpoint Manager, has simplified management. I know we see a lot of products that say that it's now new and improved and easier and simpler, but this definitely is. I manage all of my devices, even at home, with the Endpoint Manager. That way I know I'm being consistent and I'm able to keep all devices really under control and under the settings and the configuration that I want. We also, automation, we want to be able to save time by not having to manually run certain tasks or keeping check on whether something has been optimized or not. Have it automatically be done. If you're also a developer, you can extend some of the applications. Word, Excel, SharePoint, Teams can also be have been designed so they can be extended. Forms and workflow management, being able to take surveys to create forms and also to set up business processes as step-by-step workflows. And again, we're going to be looking at insights, and that's going to bring us to that second image, workplace analytics and My Analytics. We already discussed that this is now being wrapped up into Viva and being called Insights, but these are the two basic services that are built into Microsoft 365 to supply artificial intelligence-based insights based on behaviors of employees and anyone that has a user account really within Microsoft 365. It'll help identify wasteful collaboration and maybe too many meetings or long drawn out meetings. It helps measure efficiency. It also can drive certain transformations or changes that are needed within the organization. And we can visualize this data within reports and dashboards. But all of it, keep in mind, is at a high level without any individual identity. In fact, they're using a newer statistical approach that basically adds a little bit of noise to all the data, so it's impossible really to determine who said what and what specific meetings are, maybe questionable. Providing a way of being more objective and providing suggestions of how to improve workplace culture and processes. Now, the Secure Score, actually I think I said store. Secure Score is an excellent feature that shows up in Microsoft Azure portal as well as in Microsoft 365. The score is based on a percentage of how many of the best practices are you following. It gives you a report on your current state and your possible state if you would just only follow a few actions. Now, some of the actions that are recommended may not apply, so you can adjust how it's determining the score, because it may suggest something based on a regulation that you're not bound to. You may be in a particular industry, say you're not in healthcare. Why would it be giving you recommendations for HIPAA compliance? So it could be something that's configured a little bit off. You don't really need that direction. But you can also add other things to be looking for that are specific to your organization or what you would like to be aware of. So reporting on the current state, and the term security posture really means what is your current state of being prepared to deal with any security issues. So it will provide some discoverability of what may be wrong. What do you need to look at? How do you protect yourself from potential threats? You'll be able to look at KPIs and benchmarks to see how do you relate even to other businesses that are similar to yours. With simplified management, Microsoft has really consolidated multiple tools into one. We have Microsoft Intune for MDM and MAM, that's mobile device management and mobile application management, for software updates and making sure that your devices are configured appropriately. We have the good old configuration manager that can now be added to cloud services and become a co-management service. We have desktop analytics so that you can see whether certain Windows clients can or are ready for updates. We can use autopilot to automatically configure new devices or reconfigure old devices. And we can continue to rely on a common identity provider, Azure Active Directory, for identifying not just users, but these devices that you're trying to manage. They can be placed into groups, and the groups can be managed with certain policies and configurations that apply to all devices in that group. All of this can be managed through an admin center, which is a portal just for endpoint, an endpoint being the term for any device, whether it's desktop, an iPhone, Android tablet, all of them can be managed through this one common interface for your organization, whether you own the devices or whether they're BYOD, bring your own device, and the individuals, your employees own their devices. They can indicate how much they want you to manage on that particular device. Business processing automation. We've mentioned a couple of these already, such as SharePoint workflows, but we also have Power Automate, which used to be called Flow. So if you've heard the term before with Flow, basically Flow is now a feature within Automate to create workflow services to work across multiple applications. Then we also have Power Apps that lets you create new applications without code by simply designing, dragging and dropping, and making settings and connecting different services. Now you can build some high-level applications to work within Microsoft 365. And as we said too, most of these products that are part of Microsoft 365 are extensible. So whether you have third-party vendors that provide you add-ins and extra functionality with each of these, an in-house development team could also extend these products. Microsoft Forms allows you to design a new form in order to take surveys, take polls, questionnaires from your end users, whether they're through certain devices or through web browsers. There's also a step up from Windows Form called Pro, which allows you to take a little bit further for deeper analysis and creating Power BI reports from your forms. And then a nice new feature too, a new service called Microsoft Bookings. If your business is in the service of providing appointments for customers, you can allow customers to make their own bookings. So you can basically set up your schedule when certain resources are available. And so employees may be able to manage these bookings manually, maybe by over phone calls with customers, or you can expose the booking page to the customer and let them enter their own bookings. This is a web-based scheduling service, and it's also available through a mobile app from Microsoft. Business intelligence. Business intelligence has come a long way in the last 10 years, and particularly using a product we've had for quite a while. Microsoft Excel continues to be updated to work with larger and larger amounts of data. The very feature that was introduced into Excel was also put into Power BI. Now, Power BI was designed as a cloud-based product first, and then we have the desktop version of Power BI, which is a free product. But it goes way beyond what Excel can do. Excel has some limited visualization capabilities, but the same engine exists in both, so that you can get and transform data, reshaping it from multiple data sources. So if anyone has used Power Pivot in Excel or Get and Transform, you're halfway there with Power BI. Power BI takes that functionality, goes much further with it, and provides a very rich set of visualizations that are completely open-ended. Microsoft provides you with a couple of dozen out of the box, but then you can pull them down from the Power BI site as more and more visualizations are being introduced by other developers. Power BI use has exploded, mainly because, of course, data analysis is very important more and more to different businesses. So you can pull data in with either tool, and Power BI can read Excel, and now Excel can also read Power BI. So they're basically interchangeable at the data set level. So if you have users that are really hardcore Excel fans, they can continue to use it. But if you want to start sharing what they are designing, you might want to look at Power BI, because it offers a cloud solution that allows you to share reports and dashboards through a Power BI service. There's three parts to Power BI. You have Power BI Desktop, which is free, and you can build reports and work with them privately. And then you can share your content with Power BI Service. This is software as a service in the cloud, part of Microsoft 365. And then you can look at the dashboards and the reports also with a Power BI mobile app for both Windows, iOS, and Android devices. Power BI has 3 levels of licensing. There's the free version, the Pro, and Premium. So of course with Premium, it has all the features, but you may get accustomed to using Power BI for quite a while just with the free version. But when you want to share content with others, you have to at least move to the Pro version, and then you can collaborate with other Pro users. But if you move to the Premium, then you can share content even with the free licenses. Work management. We have a product called Microsoft Planner. It is a simplified version of a project server. It's not exactly the same, but you'll get the same activities or tools, such as having an overall board to plan. You can assign tasks. You can assign tasks in groups. They can be named. They can be, of course, assigned to members. They can be given deadlines, set up schedules, and they can be managed by using the same groups that you may use with other products, such as Microsoft 365 groups. All right, moving again at a faster speed. Lesson 2, Endpoint Manager. One of my favorite tools that has been introduced into Microsoft 365 is a way to manage all of your devices. Whether a small business, many times you have more devices than you have people. So we need to be able to identify, take inventory of devices that we need to manage. And this is not just for convenience, but even for security purposes, because many devices have sensitive or confidential information on them. So we want to be able to simplify our deployment and management of all devices. And this can be done now with the new Endpoint Manager that's built into Microsoft 365. Endpoint Manager includes a product you may already have heard of called Intune. Intune lets you control Android, Windows, Macs, Windows 10 devices, etc. It uses the same concepts we've had before when Intune was a separate product, but it also lets you incorporate it with Configuration Manager, which is an on-prem management tool, bring them together and do it all within one product, the Endpoint Manager. The Endpoint Manager Admin Center gives you a very simplified look. You can see all of your devices in one place, all of the apps on those devices. You can see the users and groups you're using to manage it, and reports on how they're being used. And notice there is a top level status here. Is everything okay? Is everything in compliance? And you can get alerts on anything that may have changed recently and maybe a device is no longer in compliance. All right. Autopilot. Autopilot allows you to either pre-configure new devices or reset, repurpose, and recover old devices. So this allows much quicker administration and management of the specific devices. And then once you use autopilot, then of course it can fall under the control of Intune. All right, we're down to the last few minutes here. And this particular one is an interesting twist on maybe unexpected that Microsoft 365 includes Windows as a service, which allows you to update Windows through this service called Windows as a Service. Now, this name is misleading at first when you compare it to infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service. This is WAAS. And the reason it could be misleading is it may imply to you that this runs in the cloud only. But actually, this is helping you to manage and deploy Windows from the cloud to your devices that may run Windows. So this allows you to update features, keep them at high quality, so you've got quality updates. You also have servicing channels to let you decide on the frequency that you need to update Windows. Now, keep in mind, this is similar to what we already saw with Office 365, but could be a completely different channel and schedule. You may have Windows updated more often or less often than Office. I would actually lean more toward more often than Office, because some changes in Office are dependent on some of the changes that may be in Windows, because Office on a Windows device is, of course, dependent on the capabilities of Windows. We also can look at what are called deployment rings. These are basically devices that are part of, say, a pilot program where you want to make sure that your support staff is aware of changes in Windows ahead of the rest of the organization, just like we saw with Office. You can choose to use autopilot to make sure that everything has been reset out of the box. We can have in-place upgrade. We can also have dynamic provision for multiple devices that don't have network connectivity. And we also can change subscriptions, reactivate, move between enterprise and pro, or pro and enterprise through this type of deployment. So instead of thinking of just Microsoft 365 as being only for Office, it now is also for delivery of Windows 10. We've got multiple guides that you can follow in this PPT file. All right, and then we have something that is in the cloud, and that is called Windows Virtual Desktop. This allows users to connect to a Windows desktop running in the cloud as if it's running on their local desktop, as if it is their local desktop. Similar to what used to be referred to as old terminal server or remote desktop. This is allowing you to connect right into a desktop running a full operating system, whether it's Windows 10 or even older versions of Windows that you may need to keep around for backward compatibility for some other product, or even Windows Server. Now, this is providing a direct access to these devices. So you can do this with Azure as far as creating these instances as VMs, but they're not automatically designed for you to have direct interaction with them as it is with this one. Windows Virtual Desktop is so that you can work with a Windows environment without installing it on your local device. What's really fascinating is how it works with Surface. Surface, remember, provides touch, pen, and ink and biometric authentications. So this will actually blur the lines between what's really running in the cloud and what's dependent on your device. WVD on Surface combines the two. So you can have pen and ink capabilities on Surface that are working with a machine in the cloud. Pretty cool stuff with the new Windows Virtual Desktop. All right, that brings us to 2:20, and that's actually where I'm going to stop. Some of the rest of this is a bit repetitive, so I think this is a great place to stop. I hope you enjoyed the overview here. That was almost lightning speed, whirlwind tour, but a lot to look at, a lot to consider.
It really is so much information, and I know that you could spend so much more time on it, and we really appreciate the time that you have spent with us today. We are going to go ahead and hear from Mary, and she is going to talk to us about some of the upcoming webinars and related courses to today's webinar. She is our Director of Vendor and Product here at Netcom Learning. Mary, how are you doing today?
Hello, Leela. I'm good. It's just too fast. You know, there's a lot of things that that Tom touched upon that we could spend the whole day discussing this. But I'd like to you to take the time to put your questions, and Tom will be answering that in a few minutes. Let me just go over quickly, because there are still upcoming webinars that you or your colleagues may be interested in. And let me just show you where to find it. Under our webinar page, you can see that we still have the Power Apps webinar that's happening on the 24th. And if you're actually working already in Azure, there is a sneak peek to the admin class, to the admin course on the 26th. I believe this is a Saturday. So if you're working this, and you don't have anything to do on that Saturday, I encourage you to join this, and we have a lot more. Now, I just want to show you some other references, because you may be interested in learning more. Again, this is just a snapshot of how powerful Microsoft 365 is, belonging to the modern workplace solution area of Microsoft. We do have some information here that if you'd like to know more about the certification roadmap, you can actually access this poster, and I know it's too small for you to read, so let me just blow that up. And as you see from below, you can see that each solution area has a fundamentals course. So in this case, if you'd like to deep dive into the power of Microsoft 365, have a good understanding, start off with MS 900. And you can see as well, as I said, for Azure, there are 3 that's available. And if you have some colleagues in your company that's working on B365, or who would like to build a solid foundation in this, you can also check out these classes. They're linked to the course information. And as you go up, you can see the role-based training. And this is also, Tom touched upon it. What are the components of M365? So you can see here, if you are an administrator for Teams, then you can take this 4-day class. There's also 2 classes for your enterprise admin expert. If you're involved in security, there's also this MS500 for the Microsoft 365, and so on. If you're a developer or a messaging admin, you all have the equivalent course that you can take. Also, just going back to our page, if you scroll down, you can see here as well where the courses are. Again, they are grouped according to the solution areas of Microsoft. You can definitely check out the different courses. We have schedules running, or if you have a specific need for a custom class, we can also customize the class or tailor the class based on your company's needs. Anyway, please, you can email webinar@netcomlearning.com for any questions, and we'll make sure to get back to you immediately. For the lack of time, I'll turn it over to you, Leela, so Tom can answer the questions.
Whew, we are just going through these fast today, aren't we?
Yes.
Okay, so our first question that we have right now is, let's see, how do we choose a good cloud for us?
How do we choose a good cloud? You mean as a cloud
Yes.
vendor or different services? I'm not sure specifically what that is asking. Details on
Feel
that, or?
free to clarify that
Oh,
in the questions panel and we can get
okay.
back to it. Let's see. Our next question we have is, what is the difference between IaaS, PAS, or PaaS, and SaaS?
It has everything with how much do you want to manage and how much do you want to control. So infrastructure as a service, or IaaS, means that you want to manage as much as possible. So that means you're also responsible for more, and there's quite a bit more overhead to that. So I always recommend, especially from a end user or developer perspective, that you want to focus on platform first, if not software, and leave infrastructure as a last resort. You really don't need to control as much as you think you need in an on-premise environment. So it has a lot to do with whether you want to control the VM, that would be infrastructure as a service. If you want to pick a platform to build applications on, that's platform as a service. Or you just simply want to use software, that's the highest level software as a service.
Whew. Yeah, we are getting through these questions fast. You are so thorough. Okay, our next question, and we're probably only going to be able to take about one or two more, is where do routers and switches fit into cloud infrastructure?
It would not. That would have to be done locally. There is no physical routers and switches that you have to use in the cloud. However, you do have to be aware of the virtualization concepts that support it. So when you set up a virtual network, you're basically assigning private IP addresses to a certain range. And then Microsoft will, of course, handle all the physical hardware to make that happen. You still can have what's called NSGs. You can have load balancers, but all of those are virtualized. They're not real. They're all being simulated in the cloud. And most of that physical hardware that you need is only going to be still on premise of how you might connect up to the cloud. So it's a lot less work in the cloud, even with infrastructure.
Wonderful. Our next question, which service is better for informatics? Bioinformatics, sorry. The writing's kind of small on my screen.
Which service? I don't know if I don't know that product that well, unless you're talking about biometrics, or if it's informatics, that's a separate third-party tool. So I'd have to investigate that to see how it does interact with the cloud. But I'm pretty sure there's actually a configuration for it as a virtual machine that you can immediately stand up and use in Azure. But I'm not familiar with that product enough to answer that.
Let's see, I think we have time for maybe one or two more questions. Is there a bandwidth estimation tool available as users need to move to a serverless environment?
Yes, and that's a great one to look at. It's available at azure.com. You want to make sure you're prepared as users move to the cloud. There's going to be a lot more traffic between on-prem and to the cloud, or between their device from home or wherever, because they're going to be more heavily dependent on your services in the cloud. So yes, go to azure.com, do a search for that, as well as investigate the pricing tiers for estimating your use of these services in the cloud.
Wonderful. Okay, and we will take one more just because you are so quick and awesome at answering these. So how do we use Microsoft Teams to audio video conferencing rooms?
Oh, those are tied to particular devices that you can get for you're talking about physical rooms that you may have in your organization where people can go into a conference room. You can have devices in those rooms that are tied directly to the Azure environment, to Microsoft 365, and they have, you don't have to keep reconfiguring them. They just immediately connect and set you up within your tenant. So there's only one configuration that has to be done up front, and then they will work from that point on. But it is a particular vendors like Logitech.
Wonderful. Okay, so with that being said, unfortunately, we need to go ahead and wrap up today. There's been so much amazing information. Thank you so much, Tom. Right now, we're going to go ahead and launch a quick poll to find out how many people might be interested in taking some additional training. In addition to what we had today, we do have a lot of informative webinars coming up. So please go to www.netcomlearning.com/webinars/ to register for any of those. We want to thank you all for joining us today. If you did come up with any questions that there wasn't enough time to answer them, or you come up with a few questions later, please feel free to send them to us at webinar@netcomlearning.com at any time, and we will get back to you. Once again, we hope you all found today's webinar to be very informative, and we look forward to seeing you back here with us very soon. Also, feel free to tell your friends and colleagues about our webinars and other courses. Once again, thank you everyone, and have a wonderful day.